that. I'm sure everything works now. Please let me know if the sound works. Yes, that's my fault. I just didn't forget to adjust settings. Okay, anyway, thank you for coming to my webinar. Today, this is our webinar number 77. So can you imagine? I've already conducted 76 webinars. And on this webinar, we are going to talk about knights located on the edge of the board, if their position is good or bad. Okay, please. Now everything is working. So, Michael, are you able to hear me? Refresh the page. Yes, refresh the page always helps. I can also re-log in. So I'll re-log in you and you will enter again, and I'm sure you will be able to see me and, of course, the screen. Okay, so I hope the sound is good. Perfect. So before we start the webinar, however, today we are going to analyze 3 different games played by top grandmasters. Oh, before we start, I'm going to show you something, and I also want you to share where are you from and what's your feeder rating, or if you don't have a feeder, then national rating or just a chess.com elo. Okay. Now it's just for newcomers who attends this webinar for the first time. So first of all, this is our educational group, Tricks of Chess, that I kindly recommend you to join. You actually can find the recording of this webinar. It will be available for a few more days here on this group. So if you want, you can join it. This is the link. My profile. So you can send me a friend request not to miss any announcements, any new posts that I do. This is the link. Also my website, tricksofchess.teachable.com, where you can find my online courses. Also, you can learn about coaching. These are online courses about tactics, about openings, and about endgames. Also about coaching, here I have 2 training program. You send me 10 games in PGN, and then I create a training program for you for 3 months or for 6 months. Also, so this is the link. Oh, actually, I'd better give you the link to my website, which is this. You can also might be interested in my blog. For example, there is a recent post about how to solve puzzles properly. Okay, let me close it. And finally, my YouTube channel that I kindly recommend you to subscribe. And by the way, guys, of course, here you may find the recordings of some of my previous webinars. There is a certain playlist, and almost all webinars can be found there. Okay. Fine. Maybe you have any suggestions of what should I make a video for my YouTube? So yes, I do webinars there, but maybe you're interested in something special, like top 10 most solid openings. This is the new topic that I'm going to cover. Please let me know if you are interested in it or not, or maybe about endgames, or maybe some stories about chess and chess players of the past. or about things that happened to me during chess tournaments. Okay, fine. While you're thinking, who do we have here? Stefan probably from Germany. He's about 1400 on chess.com. David with 1300 American rating. Mark with 1600. Robert from Scotland, 1400. Federica from Colombia, 1220. Sartak from Canada. I believe it's Canada. Ooh, almost 1800. Okay, Michael. Sorry, so you can't participate, but you can watch the recording on YouTube. It's the streaming is available. Top game of Mikhail Tal, maybe. Middle game coming up with a plan. Top 10 chess openings would be great. And also Bobby Fischer. And okay, fine. Thank you. A weird variation in your opening. Oh, thank you, guys. I think this is an interesting information for me. I'll take into account. What, David, what do you mean by saying speed running? Create a new account? On which platform? I understand. Yes, so Jordan, the question is what you would like to see on my YouTube channel? This is the first thing that I asked. And you suggested several things. Okay, I keep it in mind. Actually, my next video will be about top 10 most solid openings. Like not aggressive, not attacking, not sharp, but solid where you're not risking to lose. Okay, fine. So today we are going to talk about knights on the edge of the board. So, and if you remember the announcement of this webinar, I told that it was Siegbert Tarrasch who told that the knight on the rim is dim. However, it's not always true. And our task is to define in which cases it is true, in which not. And here I would like to show you the game between Tigran Petrosian and Aleksandar Matanovic. So, okay, so we somehow come to this position. Petrosian is playing with white pieces, and black played e5 here, which is not the best move. So now I want to ask you about the knight standing on the edge of the board. So there are two knights, actually, a4 and a6 knight. What can you say about the a6 knight? Okay, so the a6 knight is not doing much. Actually, yes, the a6 knight is definitely not better than the a4. So at least the a4 supports, and maybe there will be kind of a counter attack, maybe a pawn march, while this knight on a6 is the object of the attack and is actually under the attack of the queen. If, for example, the pawn was not on a7 but on a5, it could be a little bit better because if so, the knight would be protected with the rook, and the queen can move. Here the queen can't. Okay, so what is your plan? How to take the advantage of this knight being located on a6? What do you think? So, yeah, this knight needs to get at least 2 extra tempers to get back to the center. And also we see the queen blocking the c5 pawn. And you know that the queen is a bad blocker because any piece can attack the queen, and after that the queen should move. And can no longer block the pawn, of course. So, can see the chessboard. Does everyone see a chessboard? Yes. Okay, just let me know who doesn't, and I'll try to relog in you, and probably after that you will be able to see. Rook d6 sacrifice. I think rook d6 is too much. So, because if you play rook d6, bishop d6, c takes d6, queen takes d6, and you sacrifice too much. Rook d7. I think rook d7 is too brave. Okay, Mark suggests f4. f4. Sorry, f4 with the pawn. Yes, this move exactly was played on the board, because if, for example, they take, we trade the bishops off, and then we play rook d6. Now the knight on a6 is lost. So that's why the pawn on a4 cannot be taken, and this move allows us to chase the bishop. Bishop to c7. How to continue? d6? Oh no, we can't play. If you play rook to d6, we sacrifice it. b4 could make sense, I agree with you, but not in this position. If you play b4 right now, you leave this knight with no protection. Rook d3, what for? To be able to double? Maybe, but I think too slow. Okay, in this position, Tigran Petrosian played knight b6 move. That was a really nice sacrifice. The idea is that he breaks the connection between queen and knight, and also opens the c file. So a takes b6, c takes b6. The queen is under attack. It has to move. Queen goes to b7. What should we do then? At least pawn takes bishop was good, but Petrosian played better. He captured on d7, putting more pressure on this pin. So what should black do in this position? Because the next move is b takes c7, and then the pawn can be promoted easily. It's either just c8 or rook d8, and that's it. What should black do? They should play rook f7. Rook takes rook, king takes f7, and pawn takes here. So if knight takes on c7 in this exact position, how would you play? Queen h5. Yeah, it's queen h5. So queen h5, king goes to g8, and then at least bishop d4, queen e5. Yeah, maybe bishop d4 first and queen e5 as the next move. Or maybe wait, queen e5. Yeah, queen e5 right now actually looks slightly better for me. So threatening the knight. What can be done? The knight has to move, maybe to, I don't know where. Maybe rook c8 has to be played, because if knight moves e6 is hanging. So rook c8, and after bishop d4, there is nothing that black can do except moving the knight. But then they lose the e6 pawn and then the rook, of course. So the position is absolutely losing. That's why here, instead of taking the pawn, they can play rook to c8. However, it doesn't change much. Queen h5, king f8, rook d1, with the idea to play rook to d8. So if now actually queen took on c7, that happened in the game, but doesn't really matter which piece takes. For example, if knight takes, we can still play the same thing. Queen c7, queen takes h7. Queen c3, trying to counter-attack somehow, but after bishop d4, there is nothing to talk about, the game is over, queen g7, and so on. Well, you may say, what if he goes back? I have no ideas. I believe queen h8, king goes somewhere, then queen g7, several extra pawns for white, but maybe they can also checkmate. So what can you notice in this position? I mean, what can you say about this position? So the knight is not doing much. The only thing it does, it's attacking the pawn on c5, which has enough defenders. So the knight definitely should be relocated, and the best spot for him is d5. But it takes two tempests to do that. So you see, bishop was on c7, black plays bishop e5 to vacate the c7 square for the knight, then relocate it here or maybe there. But the problem is that they don't have enough time for it. So the knight doesn't participate in the game, and white immediately takes the advantage of it by playing f4, forcing the bishop to move back. And after bishop moves back, they apply a tactical strike. If here rook moves, then just queen a6. So with such a move, we break the connection and also open a discovered attack. So here, temporary, black was playing without a piece. Then their knight on a6 didn't participate in the game fully. That's why white was able to punish black with this tactical strike. Okay, fine. Let me close it. And open the other one. This is the game between Paul Keres and Laszlo Szabo. The game was played in 1954. So we're not going to analyze the full game, but we will. No, actually, we can do the analysis. So c4, knight f6, knight f3, g6, b3, kind of a weird strategy, but that makes sense because black didn't occupy the center. Bishop g7, bishop b2, castle g3, d6, d4. Now it's transposed to something natural. And c5. c5 is very common for King's Indian defense, but this is maybe the second popular move. Usually e7, e5 plan is played. Bishop g2. And in this position, black, I think, makes a mistake. Instead of developing his other pieces, he plays knight e4. The idea is obvious, but no, to take the advantage of this pin. But you see, he's playing second time with his knight. White castle, knight c6, and then after knight bd2, black realizes that he can't capture on d4. So, for example, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4, and then the knight is lost. Of course, here after knight d4, knight takes d2, queen takes d2, c takes, bishop takes, bishop takes bishop, and finally queen comes to d4. So this position is in white favor because of more space and better bishop. Not really much, but slightly better. And white also pressured the b7 pawn. That's why they didn't capture on d4, but they took on d2. If so, if black decided to take on d2, then it didn't make sense to spend several tempos with the knight just to trade it. Queen takes d2. Okay, so there is a question: is the board displayed on this platform? Yes, it is. If you don't see the board, the best thing I can recommend is to go to my YouTube channel and watch the video there. So you can watch the webinar there. This is the link. And actually, which device do you use? It should work actually on all mobile devices and on a laptop. So it's strange. Okay, anyway, at least you can find it on YouTube. So queen takes d2, bishop g4, and d5 was played. Bishop b2, queen takes b2, then they even played bishop takes f3. Looks like black is prepared to play with their knight somewhere to the center, probably to e5 or to d4. So, for example, this move, then bishop g2, and then they can try with b5 to undermine, maybe not b5, but rook b8, and then b5. However, then f4, and the knight is the object of the attack, but if of course can retreat, and it will be located much better on g4 or d7. So this is what black should do. And I was when I was watching this game, I was absolutely sure that they played bishop takes f3 with the only idea to get the knight somewhere to the center, here or there. Oh, probably to e5. On e5 it's better. But can you imagine that Laszlo Szabo in this position played knight a5? What do you think about such a move? Yeah, and this is actually a strong grandmaster from Hungary. I can't explain, but sometimes such move is possible if for example there is a weakness on c4. So b5 and some pressure on c4, usually with the light squared bishop that comes to a6. If so, it makes sense. The best thing to do it is in Queen's Indian defense. When black bishop captures on c3, this pawn goes to c3, and white gets double pawns on c3 and c4. If so, yes, knight a5 is a good move because knight there does a concrete task. It attacks the weak pawn on c4, and several of white pieces has to be tied down to protect that pawn. That's the idea. No, it's not a Hungary grandmaster. He was a grandmaster from Hungary. Hungarian grandmaster. Okay, So he played such a weird move. I don't know what he was thinking about. Probably he wanted to weaken the c4. But how can we take the advantage of this 9 being located so weird? Please suggest a plan. No, queen c3 is not the plan. It's just one move. a6 then b5 for black, but I'm asking you for white. What white should do? a3 then b4. Okay, I'll wait for more suggestions, and then I will comment definitely what you suggested. Okay, so a3 b4 was one option. Then what? e4 e5, which makes sense, of course. Put the rooks on the e file. Okay, first of all, when we notice that there is an enemy knight locating on the edge of the board, and this knight is unlikely to reach the place of action in the nearest future, we should focus on the play on the other side of the board. Here the knight is on the queen side, so what can we do? We can initiate the attack on the king side or just play in the center. So first of all, let's talk about the king side, if we can do that and if it makes sense. What can we do, for example, on the king side? We can definitely advance the pawn. h4, h5. Maybe push it to h6, because this is how we weaken the g7 square and will be threatening the mate. And he would have to play f6, which also weakens his light squares. So this is a good plan. Or we can play e4, then maybe f4 and e5, which is another good plan. But in such a case, we spend 4 tempors, and maybe he can use this time to get his knight back to the game. I definitely don't like the idea of playing a3 b4, because this is how we improve their knight. So maybe we play something like that and won't blunder the pawn on c4, but he will add more pressure on it. So if we play on the queen side where this knight is located, we are likely to get this knight back into the game. However, instead, our task should be to let the knight stay and become useless, but play on the other side of the board. So h4, h5, this is the plan. h4 was played. No. So what black should do? They played b5 to try to undermine. But they could also do this to stop the attack. In such a case, what can you suggest? How should we continue the attack here? Or should we? g4, this is what Federica suggests. Okay, almost everyone suggests g4. Anirudh suggests e4, e5. Yes, actually, I would agree with Anirudh, but first I would play queen c3, then e4, e5. Why queen c3? I just want the enemy queen stay there to protect the knight. And also, I'm thinking about kind of a relocation like that. Because if you play g4, h takes g4, bishop takes g4, and here they have a move that saves their position. It's e5 with the idea to play f5. And if so, they get a counter attack on the king side, because en passant doesn't work. If we capture, we blunder on h4. And after bishop e6, at least he can draw the game with a perpetual check, or try to do this and then move the rook up and threaten a checkmate. So I think it's too risky for us. Even if we can play f4 and somehow save the position, it's still too risky. This is what I would avoid. So g4 is not a good choice. Here h4, h5. Sorry. For h5 or queen c3. Why not queen d2? Queen d2 is still a possible move. Yeah, queen d2 works. Yeah, that makes sense as well. They both are possible. Okay, so in the game it was b5. They attack on c4. Maybe that was the goal of knight a5 move. C takes b5, that's why it was taken. Queen b6. And this is where I believe white made the mistake. So I think the best move here was h5, and if queen takes, then maybe just queen d2. Why queen d2 is should be played? Because of knight c4. Knight c4 is threatening in this position, where he wants to take the advantage of this pin and relocate the knight to a better place. But if you play queen d2, knight c4 is still unavailable, and the knight is not doing anything. Moreover, he can't attack the pawn on b3. But instead of playing h5, Paul Keres played a4, which I don't like, because after a6, even if we take, we have a weakness on b3. For example, if we take, they capture on b3 with the queen, I believe, with the queen. No, queen takes queen. Knight takes, the rook is hanging, so probably rook a3 or something, rook a2 to prevent knight d2. Then just this move, two rooks attack the a pawn, so the position is even in black favor. The knight becomes more active, and actually we can't do much in this position. So taking on a6 would be a mistake. h5 with the attack. That was correct. A takes b5. H takes g6, and in this position, if he captures with the f pawn, we can use the bishop. But it's still okay for black, and this is still a playable position. For example, h5 check, he goes to h7, and maybe g4 with the attack, then king g2 and rook h1, which looks quite dangerous, but I still believe it's possible to continue playing in this position for black. Well, as for queen c3, no, kind of, yeah, because b5 will be played anyway. However, for b5, we actually, every time black plays b5, we take, so there is no big difference. But maybe later black can push c4. When I analyzed this game with the computer, first two moves were queen c3 and queen d2. Okay, so we took queen b6, a4, a6, and h5. A takes b5, h takes g6, h takes g6. So if f takes g6, then bishop g4, bishop e6. King g2, with the idea to play rook h1 and so on. For example, if they take here, then we can capture with our rook. This is not only how we stop. No, this is not only how we continue the attack with rook h4, but we also stop knight c4 or pawn to c4. If, for example, he captures on b3 with the queen, queen a1, he goes back, and then we have a strong attack. Bishop g4 and so on. So that's why in this game b takes a4 wasn't played, instead f6 immediately. Rook h1, of course, king g7. A takes b5, queen takes b5, and then I want to ask how to play in this position. What would you do? Yeah, that's right. It's queen d2, threatening with queen h6. And if, for example, they play rook h8, how would you react on it? Mm-hmm. Yes, you can take on h8 with your rook, and the enemy rook has to stay on the a file to protect the weak knight. So if the king takes, then queen h6 with a deadly attack, like that. So that's why here, after queen d2, the only thing they can do is to play g5 to prevent queen h6 move. Queen e3, threatening to take the pawn. Queen d7, saves it. Rook a7, instead of this move, of course, rook a7 could be played, but if so, bishop e4 with a strong attack. But if queen d7 is played instead, like it was in the game, then bishop e4 is not so good, because if we play such a move, then f5. But we can play another move. What do you think? How to continue? Oh, actually, yes. Bishop e4, f5, queen g5. That's right. Okay, if you play bishop e4, then I don't. Maybe king e8 to escape with the king. Okay, in this position, white played a better move. They played this, threatening the queen. So if queen takes, this is a mate. Doesn't really matter where the king moves. It's queen h7 anyway. So bishop g4. No, if queen b7, then queen e4, threatening to play to h7. And if rook h8, then at least we can capture the rook. Oh, here, bishop h5, why not? But I think we'd better capture. And if he captures with the rook, he loses the knight. If he captures with the king, then we use our other rook, king g7. And these, king f8, go there. He goes there, and this is a checkmate. Wait, it's not a checkmate because we have to make one more move. Queen h7 is a checkmate. So that's why after bishop g4 he plays queen to c7. However, after queen e7 there is no need to play queen e4. Our d5 pawn is hanging. That's why bishop f5 is stronger. King escapes to f7. Rook h8 doesn't work. It will be similar to what we already analyzed. Rook h7. King goes to e8. And then anything works. How would you continue the attack? Queen e6. Bishop g6, bishop g6, king d8. I think here the most solid move is b4. So this is the final thing. We take the advantage of the pin. If he moves the knight, he loses rook, and maybe this is even a checkmate. Oh, like that. No, not this move. This move blunders the piece. So, for example, this. We take, queen has to block, and then queen e7 is a mate. So he has to take. If he does so, we play rook c1. Queen goes there. And then we play bishop g6. He goes there. And finally, rook e7, because the idea of our b4 move was to get rid of the c5 pawn, because after this, we have queen b6. Now he goes there, and there should be a checkmate. Maybe not a checkmate, but we can capture something. Something like that. Yeah, no, something like that. Yeah, what I'm talking about, guys. You're right. Thank you. Queen c7 just instead. So b4, no, this is what Paul Keres didn't notice. He didn't play b4. Instead, he played rook a to h1 with a clear plan to play rook h8. And actually, there is nothing they can do to succeed. So they can, for example, capture on d5, but just bishop e4, and this rook on e8 is lost. So this is where he resigned. Okay, so let's go back and look at the move number 13, knight a5, which was a weird mistake. The only hope of such a move is that maybe in future black should somehow attack on c4, but they couldn't. So that's why when somebody plays with the knight to the edge of the board, always think about how you can take the advantage of it. One of the best ways, if you see that the knight can join the game for several tempos, you'd better focus on the play on the other side of the board, either in the center or on the king side. Here, white started with the king side attack and weakened the enemy pawn structure, and then took the advantage of the h file. However, if, for example, h5, which prevents the attack, then we'd better focus on the king in the center and play e4, e5, and then move our queen. So maybe we can also use the f pawn to support the e pawn. Yeah, so knight a5 was a weird mistake, but knight d4 and actually not knight d4, but knight e5 was a better option. Okay, fine. Let me close it. And the last game that I want to show you is maybe the most interesting game, full of different combinations. This is the game played between Veselin Topalov and Vladimir Kramnik. The game was played... Wait, when the game was played? In 1995, if I'm not mistaken. So, guys, by the way, let me ask a question. What do you think if we... if instead of one webinar on Sunday, we have two webinars during a week, but they will be like not so long, not 1 hour and 15 minutes, but maybe 45 minutes each. What can you say? So let's say webinar maybe on Tuesday and Sunday, or webinar on Wednesday and Sunday. So, but, And what do you think if we move to Twitch? Okay, I see it doesn't work for many of you, but okay, Sundays. Yeah, I'll keep Sunday webinars, don't worry, but I'm about to add one more. One more, and that will be the one I will conduct on Twitch. What can you say about it? It will be my it can be evening time for Americans. Yeah, I can record it. Evening time for Americans, which is night hours for Europe and United Kingdom. Actually, that's not so good. And if it's American morning, it's an afternoon for Central Europe. Okay, fine. I'll think about it. Maybe some people can join. Okay, this is the game between Topalov and Kramnik. So let's flip the board. There was a kind of a weird opening. It's chess base 15. Quick board. Yes, it's chess base 15. Okay. E4 c5, knight f3, knight c6. Looks like a normal Sicilian. And after bishop c4, queen b6 was played. No, this line exists. I don't actually remember the name of it. If you know, please let me know. It's not Godiva variation. Godiva variation usually happens when e6 is played first. No, it's not Khan. If you remember what line it is, just let me know. So knight db5 was played. a6 chasing the knight, but bishop a3 first, and the queen has to move. Queen a5. Knight goes back to d4. So what can you say about knight e4 in this position? This is what Vladimir Kramnik didn't play, but what can you say? Looks like we just captured the pawn for free. Am I right? Okay, so Mark is correct. It's queen f3, threatening to take on e4, on f7. And if, for example, knight c3, it's just knight c6, and then queen takes c6. And even after king d8, bishop b6 can be played, so white wins the game. So what else can be done? Maybe knight g5, but it's still same thing. After knight g, not this. So bishop g5, knight takes d4, queen takes f7. No, not bishop. Sorry, queen takes f7, and then after king d8, what do you think can be done? No, if you castle queen side, they take on g5 with a check. So not this. Okay, maybe knight d5 in this position. Yeah. Oh, what am I doing? Of course not. So this move, and if they take, we play these, and then maybe knight d5. No, takes. Then knight d5. No, why do I suggest it? Because then bishop a5 leads almost to a checkmate. So queen a4 check, b3. Maybe b3 is a mistake. Okay, let's go back. So bishop g5, knight takes d4, then bishop f7. No, queen takes f7, king goes to d8. Oh, I am sure it's still a winning position. Okay, let's ask the engine. I think rook d1 actually. Rook d1 with rook d6 idea. Wait, they think it's in their favor. Okay, so maybe queen f7 was a mistake. Yeah, bishop f7. King d8. And then just queen d3. So if he takes there, we take the knight. No, of course, he'll do this. He'll capture on c2. Then queen takes c2, then queen g5. But we may castle, and then which side to castle? Yeah, this. We can castle, and bishop h3 is not a big problem. Just this move. So the position is almost winning for us, for white, I mean. Okay, let's close it. So, of course, they knew about knight e4. They both analyzed this position before, I'm sure. That's why knight e5 was played. Bishop d3, knight e to g4, chasing this dark squared bishop. Bishop c1, g6. So now it's transposes to dragon, but of course not the original line of dragon variation. Knight b3, queen b6, queen e2, bishop g7, and Topalov plays f4. What do you think he has in mind, and what black move should be? Who wants to trap the knight? White wants to trap the knight with which moves? Okay, so h3, g4. Yeah, this is a problem. If, for example, in this position we castle, they will play h3. What? Knight goes there, then g4. g5 is a threat. Moreover, the knight on h6 is not doing anything. What can you suggest us to play? So if, for example, black plays e5, it's still h3, g4. e5 doesn't work. It doesn't help us at all. h5. h5 looks better, actually. But after h3, the knight on h6 doesn't look good. Okay, I'll show you. Here, knight h5 was played. And this is the best time for us to learn when the knight on the edge of the board is good and when it's bad. So here the knight went to the h file with the concrete goal. It prevents h3 because now h3, knight g3. The second thing is that this knight tries to attack the dark squares that you will later realize, especially the f4, maybe g3. So when the knight goes to the edge of the board with the concrete goal, for example, to attack something, to prevent something, or to occupy a certain square later, then it makes sense. And such moves should be considered. However, every time you move the knight to the edge of the board, you should be looking for a counterplay in the center, because the knight goes away from the center, what means that your opponent can occupy it. And you know how the center is important. That's why you should analyze any counter attack there. So here, this move made sense, but of course the knight secured the d5 square, which now was occupied with the enemy knight. Queen goes to d8. Bishop d2. Well, castle was also possible, but bishop d2 contains the concrete goal to play bishop to a5 and knight c7. What do you think we should do? Take on b2, but how to deal with bishop a5? Then rook b1 and our bishop retreats, so it's losing. Castle now. No, okay. Castle, bishop a5, queen d7, knight b6, queen e8, knight c7. a5, I doubt a5 is possible. No, a5, maybe bishop b5 is dangerous. After which, yeah, so yeah, a5, bishop b5, and king b f8 is the only move. So no, b6 can be probably played, but here black found the best move. They played e6. The other possible move was e5. What's the idea of such a move? If now bishop a5, this is what exactly was played by Veselin Topalov. However, the other option, which looks better, was queen g4, e takes d5, queen f3, and then castle, with the idea to take the control over the e file and even sacrifice the pawn. So if they castle, then d takes e4, bishop e4, and the position is approximately equal. b2 is handing, by the way. We can capture it, but white definitely has the compensation. In that position, after a5, I wouldn't trade two minor pieces for a useless rook on the a file. So bishop a5 was played by Topalov, queen h4 check, g3, knight takes g3. So here, if h takes g3, we of course don't capture the rook, because if we capture the rook after king d2, I'll show you. If we capture the rook after king d2, we have to move the queen, and knight c7 is a threat. But after h takes g3, we can capture on g3 with a check, and then capture the knight on d5. So that's why Topalov plays knight c7, check. King goes to e7. H takes g3, queen takes g3. King goes to d1. Oh, if it goes to d2, I believe queen e4 was in black favor. So he goes to d1. Knight f2. King goes there. And in this position, I believe black made a mistake. Instead, he could just play rook b8, save his rook, and later capture on e4. And this is where he could have the compensation for the piece that was sacrificed. He didn't do that. He played this move. But Topalov also made a mistake. He captured it on a8. Instead, he could capture on h1 after queen f4. For example, king d1, rook b8, Bishop goes there, and in this position, white has two minor pieces for pieces are much more active. For example, here bishop, but bishop d2, g4 goes there, and then if this move, then just queen e7, the game is over. The rook is trapped, and if king takes bishop a5. Of course, king d7 is not the best move. b6 can be played, but even if such a move is played, white still has a good position. Maybe on a6 can be captured. Maybe what else? Rook g1. Bishop e3. Yeah, bishop e3 looks like a good move. Pressuring here, so why not? No, anyway, that was better for white, but they took on a8. Queen f4. Queen goes to e3, queen h2, queen e2. So they repeated the position. And then black decided to play bishop h6, forcing the king to go to c3. If it goes to d1, then queen checks on g1, queen e1, queen g4. Bishop blocks if they don't want to draw the game. But then queen e4. And after knight b6, we can just play this move with the idea of knight f2 as the next, so that black wins the game because white has to sacrifice the queen. Okay. No, if you have any questions regarding the game, you can ask during the game. As for Twitch, I streamed maybe once or twice, but I don't do it often. So I'm going to start it again. But the problem is that I don't know how to connect this Click Meeting webinar platform to Twitch. And if it's possible, then I would be doing webinars here and there. Okay, so king c3 was played on the board. Queen e5 check. King goes to b4. Knight g3. Queen e1. So queen b2 is a possible move in this position. No, actually, no. Queen b2 is not, because rook b1 and what? So bishop g7. This is what was played. Now, the GM makes mistakes during the game, and our task is to realize why these mistakes happened. So, for example, what happened when he played with the knight to the edge of the board in the previous game? Why in this position knight to the edge of the board was okay move? This is our task. So bishop g7 was the last move. What happens then? Knight b6. And then d5. And black is almost winning. So, for example, if e takes d5, then queen d6 check. King goes to... No, if it goes to a4, then bishop d7, knight takes, and b5. After which he sacrifices the piece, then loses on d7, and we continue with the strong attack. If knight c5 in this position, then the best move is bishop d4. He goes there, but it doesn't work. After b6, we gain a piece. And then continue the attack on the king, of course. So if what? King c4. If king c4, for example, then we may continue with queen f4, king c5, bishop d7, And then our plan is bishop a5, d6 with a checkmate. There is not much they can do. So that's why after d5 they didn't take on d5 but played king to a4. Bishop d7 check, knight takes d7, b5, king goes to b4, king takes on d7. And the idea of black is that they are threatening with bishop f8 move. That's why white tries to prevent it by playing bishop b6. And I'm going to ask you, what would you do in this position? How would you play? Oh, actually, maybe not in this position. Yes, in this position, how would you play? King c6? King c6, bishop c5. Rook b3, what do you mean? Oh, it's not rook b3. Rook c8. Rook b8. Rook b8, bishop c5. Okay, so Rommel here is correct. It's knight e4 move. This move wasn't played on the board, but that was the best way to play. For example, if bishop takes e4, queen b2, with the idea to play bishop f8. For example, bishop d3 and king c6. And then it's over. For example, what can be played? If bishop c5 in this position, bishop c3, queen has to take, and then a5, trying to distract the king. And actually, after king goes there, we capture the queen, and the game is over. Yeah, we capture the queen first. However, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we can play rook e8. Yeah, rook e8 right now. So the only move they can play is this, but if he plays such a move, we can capture the queen. He goes there, and this is a winning position. Maybe it's better. Yeah, I think it's better to take the queen first, and if he goes to a6, then we take on c5, and then checkmate with our rook. That should be the best. The knight can't take, it's pinned. If something else after king c6, for example, what else can be done? Well, let's say rook b8, then just bishop f8 move, and here bishop takes. No, you see, so king a5 is not possible, just queen a3 mate. So he plays this move, we take, he goes there, and it's still queen a5, queen a3 mate. So knight e4 was the best, but Kramnik didn't notice it, and that was definitely not his preparation. He played queen takes b2, e takes d5, rook to c8, d takes e6, and we don't take, but play king to e8. Why? If we capture, for example, bishop b5, a takes b5, and the king gets another square to escape, this one. If we go to e8, and then he does bishop b5, we can capture, he takes here, and then he takes on g3, Just queen c3 is enough to win the game. It takes, and this position is winning because the pawns are located far from the enemy king. So king e8, bishop c5 was played. And then you know what happened. Bishop c3, queen c3, and a5. He took on b5 with the king, but queen takes c3, the game is over. So this is what happened in their game. Okay, now let's go back to the critical moment of the game, which I believe was this, when knight h5 is played. So what I want you to learn from this webinar, first of all, when you see that your opponent plays with the knight to the edge of the board, you should analyze what's the goal of such a move. If there is nothing concrete, but he has some potential ideas of doing something there, then you'd better leave the knight on the edge of the board and try to focus the game on the other side of the board, so that it will take several tempers for him to join the knight back to the game. But definitely you shouldn't open that side, because if you do it, then the enemy knight on the edge of the board joins the game immediately. So you can either play on the other side of the board or in the center in such a case. What about you now? If you want to move the knight to the edge of the board, you should always analyze the consequences. So first of all, you should play such a move with a concrete goal and understand that the knight goes away from the center and your opponent is likely to take the advantage of it immediately. And if he can, then everything depends on your ability to calculate and estimate if you get more benefits with the knight on the edge of the board. For example, like here, when we prevent h3 move and attack g3 and f4 squares, which was important for our position later after queen d8 and queen h4. So in such a case, this knight move makes sense and definitely should be analyzed. But before you make this move on the board, you should analyze the consequences of knight d5, of course, because the knight goes away and you should be prepared for it. So if g3 by white in this position, fine, who cares? G3 may be e6, e6 cannot be played. What can be done? I don't know, maybe bishop c3 and castle. What do you think? Or bishop e6 right now? Anything. So bishop c3, b takes c3 and castle. Something like that. The other thing I can suggest is just bishop e6 move, because if knight d5, I'll take it. And then one of the knights goes back, for example, which... Oh. Yeah, maybe this. No. No. Maybe it's not so good. Okay. Yeah. So it's better to play bishop c3 and then castle, for example. No, knight g3, knight h2 doesn't work. Okay, fine. So I hope you enjoyed the webinar. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them. If you are looking for private coaching, you can also message me and you can email me at Tricks of Chess. Okay, so tricksofchess@gmail.com. So I'm not working alone. I have a group of coaches. So one of them is even a grandmaster and actually quite famous. So if you want to get him as your coach, you can also message me. And nowadays he charges actually not a huge amount, quite a small amount actually. So if you are interested in my courses, you can also Message me. I'll answer all your questions. Any suggestions about future webinars are welcome. And if you are looking for certain openings, you can also let me know. I'm sure I can suggest you something. Okay, thank you, and see you on